beautiful people. I'm here with Gregory Klumov. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your background? Where you come from? How do you like Malta so far?
I love Malta. This is one of the best islands in the Mediterranean Sea. Very nice climate. I don't like it very hot, you know. And as for background, I have a mathematical background. I started my first business when I was 15. It was an internet service provider. So I was very early to internet. I learned how it worked, networking, all that stuff, cybersecurity. And then I decided I didn't want to work as a programmer for a living. And I went to work for finance. I was an analyst in a big family office and later managed a hedge fund.
What is your vision for Stasis? And maybe from your background, what was the problem? So what do you want to solve with Stasis?
So Stasis is a backbone. It's going to be a platform that brings capital to digital assets globally. And it is a backbone between these two worlds, between the traditional financial world and the crypto world. And basically like a bridge that allows capital freely traverse between two dimensions.
When was the first time that you got in touch with Bitcoin? When did you start trading cryptocurrencies? You have the financial background, and also the mathematical background, which is a very good, probably, gives you a good connection with the cryptocurrency space.
Totally. So I was an analyst in a hedge fund, and I was researching what's the macro issues of the world are, how the monetary system works, and how much central banks were printing money to save the economy after financial crisis in 2008. And then realized at some point central banks were pumping like $200 billion worth of equivalent per month just to save the too big to fail institutions, banks, and some insurance companies from going bankrupt. And then I realized at some point there'll be a relocation of capital to some scarce asset. It was back in 2008, and the commodities was a perfect example back then of this particular asset class. Community and investment managers considered to be scarce. But it turned out that commodities can be produced if the price rises at a certain level. They can be recycled, oil can be digged out of your ground, literally with the shale technologies. So I took a pause for a while, and then in 2011, 2012, I came back to this Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies analog, where our partners launched Bitcoin fund, and I slowly started trading it.
How will this transform the crypto world in general? Is this the next level? Where do you see the Bitcoin price going in the next years?
Sure, very good question. So I treat it again as an asset class, and I think it's a true member of liquid alternative, which is a huge asset class by itself. ETFs, for example, was like a couple billion market 20 years ago. Now it's a 3 trillion market. Hedge funds now 3 trillion asset class as well. So I think that digital assets is the first time in human history, institutional capital missed allocation to an asset class because previously it was private investors, then like founders or some smart investors, then venture funds, then private equity funds, then banks, and then only the public that joined the asset class. And now it's the first time in human history institutionals missed capital allocation. In now a project like ours and other legalized investment products like Bitcoin ETF, which will be possible soon after custody now being created in Coinbase, will help put more institutional capital to this marketplace. And again, think about it, global equities is like 70 trillion asset class. Global fixed income, 200 trillion asset class. Global real estate is 100 trillion asset class. And commodities at the peak of the bubble in 2008 traded 7% of the global GDP, which is today also around 80 trillion. So I think digital assets are well positioned to follow the commodity asset class path back in 2008 if there is like a new true bubble, and then they could trade couple trillion valuation. So it's 10x from here.
You are here in Malta, which is on the forefront in terms of providing a regulatory framework for companies as yours. How do you utilize this?
So Malta has been very friendly with us, and we are here since 2011, and we've been collaborating and educating local regulators and government officials on this technology since our first investment product was created, Bitcoin Fund, back in 2012. And it is a race now, you know, like after Japan legalized Bitcoin in 2017, countries now feeling they have to get a piece of the action in this global marketplace for tax revenue, for intellectual capital, for financial capital. Even in the United States, the states among themselves compete for this asset class, for these businesses. Let's say in New York, 3 miles whatever from Statue of Liberty in New York City, Manhattan, the legislation is worse than in Wisconsin or Wyoming.
Yeah.
So people establish other entities in other states, even if they New York residents. So even states within one kind of big state compete for this asset class. So I think this will continue as Malta is well positioned to be the leader of this race.
That's a very interesting point. May I ask a follow-up here? How do you see this Bitcoin and blockchain revolution also affecting exactly this legal environment that, as you said, there's more competition between countries, between counties even, to provide a good environment, and what is a good environment? Do you think in the next 20, 30 years, nation states will be history and like we will have blockchain territories?
Oh, very good question. Well, definitely in a blockchain world, or a 1 year is too much of a period to forecast. But I assume more intellectual capital, financial capital will come to this country, unemployment rate will fall, GDP will rise, real estate prices will rise, there'll be more economic activity going on, more taxes coming into the government, maybe the government can finally build some more electricity generation to be self-sufficient in electricity, not to import it from Italy or something. And Stasis is well positioned to help because we'll be accumulating reserves and we'll be allocating them to government securities like government bonds, thus lowering interest rate for the government to borrow money and to do some good stuff for people, you know, to build better roads, bridges and infrastructure.
Maybe a last question. You mentioned Stasis also following up with the success of Bitcoin or based upon it. What is the role for Bitcoin in your eyes?
It's still one of the most tradable digital assets, and we'll be implementing in our wallet Bitcoin as an asset next month. So far it's Ether, because we're using Ethereum blockchain as the main network, main platform where we operate. But it's still, if you look at the volumes, you cannot ignore Bitcoin. It dominates the market, having like 35% of the total market cap, maybe more right now, 40%, at almost a quarter of total trading volume. So if you want to facilitate business in this marketplace, you have to follow, track and trade Bitcoin.
Thank you very much for the interview. It was a pleasure. Best of luck with your project. Buy Bitcoin, be free. No financial advice. See you in the next video. Perfect.